What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Kind of Funny Screencast. As always, I'm Tim Gettys, but this time I'm joined by a very different cast for this show. We got sad boy Barret himself, Barret Courtney.
I'm one with the Force. The Force is with me, boys. Let's go.
And we got IGN's own Jonathon Dornbush.
Barret doesn't look so sad today because we have some exciting stuff to talk about.
It's so much exciting stuff. We got the Bush here with us. I'm excited. We should all be excited. It is May the 4th, a very Star Wars themed episode of Screencast today. We're going to be doing the full review of Clone Wars. We're going to start it off spoiler free. We'll get into all the spoilers. Before that, though, it's May the 4th. There's a ton of news I want to go through, see where our hype levels are for some things. If we have any concerns, it's some good stuff, though. But before we get into that, this is Kinda Funny Screencast each and every week right here on twitch.tv/kindafunnygames. We talk about everything you need to know about movies, TV, and streaming services. You can watch the show live on Twitch, or you can watch it later on youtube.com/kindafunny or roosterteeth.com. You can also listen to it as a podcast. Just search your favorite podcast service for Kinda Funny Screencast. It's been a great time. We usually talk about what we've been watching, all the news going on that week, but this episode is special because it is May the 4th. Disney's treating it special, so we're going to treat it special because we need some good things in our lives. Good things just like our Patreon producers, Muhammad, Cameron Reagan, Steve Powers, Lee Polero, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, Karen O'Donnell, and Drew Gardnier. Thank you all very much for being supportive. You can go to patreon.com/kindafunny. Get this show ad-free, just like they're all doing. It's fantastic stuff. Today we're brought to you by MeUndies and Hims, but I will talk to you about that later. For now, let's get right into it, baby. News of the day.
Break it down, Timmy boy.
Taika Waititi to direct new Star Wars film. Let's go.
Yeah.
He's co-writing with 1917 writer Christy Wilson Cairns. Disney and Lucasfilm announced today that Taika Waititi is officially directing a new Star Wars movie. They also officially confirmed the new Untitled Star Wars TV series that's in the works at Disney Plus from Russian Doll creator Leslie Headland, which Variety reported exclusively last month. The film news reports that affirms reports that first broke in January that Waititi was developing a Star Wars movie on the heels of his well-received work directing the season finale of The Mandalorian. It's unclear if Waititi's film is one of Disney's 3 untitled Star Wars movies dated for December 2022, 2024, and 2026, or if it's separate. If it's a separate project entirely. Previously, the filmmaker was coy about these reports when Variety asked him about it in February after he won the Best Adapted Screenplay for Oscar Jojo Rabbit. Are there any discussions about Star Wars film? Like, yeah, I discussed with my friends in 1996 how cool Star Wars was. I think people see me hanging out with people, especially with Star Wars, and I think I'm having some big discussions about it. I'd fucking love to. If I was right, I would want to do any. I'd want to do any kind of movie if it made sense, and if it felt like, and if it didn't feel like career suicide. So, let's go, guys. What do you think?
I mean, this is the thing where I'm at right now. It's like, I'm all in on Star Wars outside of the movies. So especially with like my personal takes on the recent movies, I'm still like, I'm cautiously optimistic is what I'll say. I think obviously Taika being at the helm, I think is very exciting. Directing and helping write. I think it's an interesting team up with the writer of 1917.
Noted comedian.
Yeah, noted comedian for the writer of 1917. So it'll be interesting to see like how they balance that, especially since we're going to get a lot of what Taika does. So I'm interested to see like what they do to pull that off, and I'm just interested to see like what story they would want to tackle. Especially it's weird because we're now in a post Skywalker saga era of like what stories are they going to want to do now. Saw some people being cheeky on Twitter saying like, we're finally going to get Solo too. And that maybe not so much is something I would want from him, but yeah, I'm interested to see where they would want to go now, what story that they would want to tell. But obviously, like I'm on my 2020 MCU rewatch, and we the last movie we just watched was Ragnarok, and I think like any kind of major property you give to Taika, he's gonna fucking hit it out of the park. So I'm excited. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, he's really good at injecting himself into a major property, as he showed with Thor. And I think we are, like you just said, Barret, we're in this really interesting period right now where we're post the Skywalker saga, but even during that time, they were going to start doing all those anthology movies after Rogue One, and then they all kind of fell apart. And so I think they are kind of in a like blank slate place. Like they don't have to do anthology stories that are really tied to the Skywalker saga. They can go a little further out. And they do obviously have some holes to fill. My guess is he probably wouldn't be responsible for the most recent like dated upcoming Star Wars movie, just because he still has to get through Thor: Love and Thunder, and given like production delays with the whole MCU getting pushed back a little bit, that's probably going to be his first focus.
Quick question. What is Thor Love and Thunder slated for now?
February 7th, 2022. It got pushed up to be the week before Valentine's Day. In the most recent push that happened last week.
Yeah, that was like a couple week shift, and then it originally was set for November, I think, 2021.
Yeah. So that movie's been shifted twice now. It went from November to late February, and then from late February to early February.
Yeah. I know, I'm doing
Kevin, where you at?
Oh man,
you gotta love.
My bad. Sorry, guys.
It's all good, man. Here's the thing, though, with all of this is I feel like it's easy for all of us, for everyone, to kind of look at this and not be as excited as we should be, just because Star Wars movies, I feel like, I mean, at the very least, they're divisive with people. Yeah. So, and especially like not even just the Skywalker saga, but the anthology movies. It's like so far, it's pretty hit and miss, right? I feel like regardless of that, we're getting more Star Wars. I want more Star Wars. And if we're going to get more Star Wars, I want Taika involved. He hasn't let me down yet with anything I've ever seen from him. Like I just watched Jojo Rabbit for the first time like a couple weeks ago. And if you haven't seen that movie, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Of course, we love Ragnarok. And what I think is awesome about Ragnarok is, Jonathan, you were talking about how he injects himself. It's like he didn't even write that movie, but it still felt like he did, you know? And then you look at the last episode of Mandalorian, and it's just like, that is definitely one of my favorite episodes of the season. And I think that to me is an example of Taika can do something with the property and still inject himself, like his style, but it doesn't need to be this over the top, crazy, Hitler's my imaginary friend and everything's neon colored Ragnarok. It can be in the world that Mandalorian set up and still just be dope as fuck because he's touching the thing, right? And I think that adding the 1917 angle to this, like I think this could be something really special.
Yeah.
I just kind of hope that it isn't using things that we're familiar with. I feel I don't want to have a repeat of the Lord and Miller situation of Solo, where they signed on for a very specific reason, which is to add their vision to these characters we know, and we all know how that turned out. I feel like I'd rather Taika just get your own toys to play with. Like, I don't want to have to worry about, following some like top-down vision of where Han Solo's character is going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think he showed a balance of that with Thor. Like, chances are the higher-ups from the overarching Disney who get the even higher-ups in each individual, like Marvel and Star Wars, Lucasfilm and everything, talking, they probably can see that he both is able to kind of do his own thing and inject his own flavor, but also kind of do what he has to do at the end of the day, which is a job. Like, this is a job he has to perform. And so I do think Taika has proven he can do his own thing and be really creatively accomplished at that, but also work within a framework and still be really creatively accomplished with that. So I think he's a really great fit for this. Like Tim, you were saying, I know it's easy to be like cautiously optimistic, and for sure, like we'll wait and see, because the movie franchise has definitely had its ups and downs right now. But I think I'm really excited to see what Lucasfilm as a whole does with this High Republic era that we're going to go into, which is right now just like a comics and book focused thing. But this is their first time like really establishing a new era of the new canon. And I think how they work within that and how they let authors and artists and everything work within that, I think may be a good framework and a good understanding for what they're going to do with these movies going forward, if it succeeds or if it fails.
Absolutely. Then moving on, that wasn't it. So Star Wars has been dropping a whole bunch of stuff today. I mean, the least of which on Disney Plus, there's a full takeover of Star Wars with concept art, beautiful concept art. If you guys haven't loaded up Disney Plus yet, do it just to see all the different art they put for the different Star Wars movies. And it's some really cool stuff. Most of it like we've seen before, but just the way that they kind of like put it all out this time, it's very well presented. There's like Twitter takeovers where you got the Star Wars emojis are back if you want to use those. But most importantly, I would say that Mandalorian documentary Episode 1 is out on Disney Plus. The
I'm so
final
excited to watch
episode
that.
ever of Clone
Me too.
Wars is out, and Star Wars Episode 9 is available now on
thank God.
Disney Plus. So the entire Skywalker saga available to be watched now on Disney Plus. I think not every Star Wars movie though. Solo isn't there yet, right?
Solo's still on Netflix, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Solo's still planning on. I think it's sometime this summer. Yeah,
I think it's July. Yeah.
And I think that's like the same month. Like the rest of the Marvel movies are dropping over there too. Like Infinity War and Ant-Man 2 are still on Netflix. So I think they're still waiting for those contracts to run up.
Then on the game side, they announced Vader Immortal is finally coming to PlayStation VR.
God damn it, man! God damn it!
I
I got so if you've been following me, I just got an Oculus Quest, specific, like, of course, to play Beat Saber, which I've played before, which is fun and super hot. But I also got it specifically, the Quest, because of Vader Immortal, because I think Vader Immortal is only available on Oculus VR headsets. And then, of course, a week later, they're like, it's coming to PSVR. So
I feel like, Barret, you got screwed every which way with Star Wars game news, because I woke up this morning and I was like, oh my God, Vader Immortal, that's hilarious. Barret just got this. And then the other side of it, I was like, and they announced like new content for Jedi Fallen Order with New Game Plus, and you just replayed the game.
I just replayed the game for stream, and I also just deleted it off my PS4.
Oh man, we just started a replay this last weekend because my girlfriend is playing through it because we're doing a whole like Star Wars universe rewatch, replay, whatever.
And in canon order, right?
Yeah, we're doing in canon order through everything.
So
we're trying to keep the timing right. But so yeah, we jumped into Jedi Fallen Order this week, and I was like, great new costumes and stuff. But we did start the new game, so I guess like new game plus ish stuff. I'll have to wait till after she's done.
Yeah. So that's fun stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think really the big thing is all the Disney Plus releases today. Something I don't know if you guys are too interested in, but they did also announce in the last hour or so that they're going to do an exclusive reunion of the Star Wars Clone Wars cast on Friday. And you can watch that on the internet. It's a part of the D23 at home stuff they're doing. So that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, kind of going in order. None of us have watched the Mandalorian thing yet, right?
No,
haven't gotten a chance.
I'm excited too, because that's like, even though I feel like a lot of us, especially Kind of Funny, had varying levels of feelings on that show, especially episode to episode. But even at the end of the day, no matter our feelings, that the way they made that show, I think, is super interesting. And like just seeing like the image pop up on Disney Plus, where it's just like a director's roundtable, I think is super fucking cool. Like you see, I'm
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah, I always switch the Dallas and the Bryce. Bryce Dallas Howard, Taika, Dave Filoni is on there. Like just seeing that shot, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch this. I'm really excited too.
There's so many interesting creative people involved in that, even if they just popped in for an episode, like Barret was saying. So I think the chance to see all of this, one of my favorite parts of watching that show, even if each episode wasn't the best episode, like successively, I loved the concept art at the end of every episode. Like it was so gorgeous to see all that stuff and how it translated to the real show. So the idea that this is going to further go in, obviously they were using that really interesting filming technique of sort of the soundstage with the giant video walls that they were employing. So there's so much to how that show was made that I think will make for a really good documentary. And it sets the stage for them to do this in the future with either other Star Wars shows or MCU shows on Disney Plus. Like this opens the floodgates for that.
Definitely. And then you guys have any plans to watch Rise of Skywalker anytime soon?
I'm going in universe order, so I will eventually. But
you're waiting for it?
Yeah, we're gonna wait until we get to that point in the timeline.
Nice.
No,
it's a no from me.
Yeah. The thing that we did watch though is Star Wars: The Clone Wars season 7 finale.
Yes.
I guess the whole thing as a whole, because we haven't really talked about it too much on Screencast. You popped in, I think, for a bit, Barret, to give your thoughts, or at least at some point I gave your thoughts.
The last time I called into Screencast was when the casting news for Ahsoka for Mandalorian season 2.
Yes, which is something we'll definitely be talking about here as well, which is great. So what I want to do is like start off kind of spoiler free for the season as a whole, but specifically I think, the last couple episodes and the finale and what it means, because you guys both have seen all of the Clone Wars, Rebels, all that stuff, correct?
Yeah. I don't think Dorno has watched Rebels.
No, I haven't seen Rebels yet because we were going to start watching it, and then we realized when we were going to do this universe order thing, let's start with Clone Wars. And so I watched all of that for the first time in the lead up to season 7.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So this has been your first Clone Wars experience.
Yeah, the
all the way
last few
through.
months, I watched the whole thing in chronological order. Barret had originally given me like a pared down version of it, but we were like, this
we're
is the
gonna
wonderful
do
list.
this.
Screw it, we're just going to watch the whole thing for the first time. And
Yeah.
so we watched the whole thing
Awesome.
over the last few months. Yeah.
And then for me, I mean, you guys have heard me talk about Clone Wars before. I've never fully got into it. I've seen episodes here and there. I've always, every time I watch it, I enjoy it. And every time I watch it, I'm just like, this shit's cool. But there's always enough in it that I'm like, I don't really want to commit to this as like a long-term thing. But recently I watched the first 3 episodes, and I know everyone kind of hates on those. I guess it wasn't recent. It was when we went to London last year, but I enjoyed it a lot. And I think that it kind of worked as a movie, just watching the first 3. And I was like, this is entertaining. I can see why people don't fully vibe with it. But if this is the stuff people don't like, I imagine the show gets much better.
Oh, yeah.
But then it's kind of funny, actually, that my history with the show really is just watching the first 3 episodes and now watching the last 4 episodes.
The animation jump.
Oh my God, is insane.
I know.
Yeah.
But what I think is most interesting about it is clearly, so the first 3 episodes were originally released as the movie.
And I think that's why people hate on it, because they look at it from a movie standpoint and not a show standpoint, where it was like those were supposed to be the first 3 episodes of the series. And then Lucas was like, nah, let's do a movie. And Filoni was like, all right, I guess. And so, it just wasn't like a strong debut selling point for that, because it was a movie. I imagine if it was, hey, this is the series opener for this show, people would have been more into it.
Yeah, but what I thought was awesome is that in addition to the animation leap and stuff, it's funny that the last 4 episodes also are presented as a movie. And I bet you this gets like released as like one full thing at some point somehow, because it is so tied together in a way, as evidenced even by like the title screens and how they treat stuff, where I was like, wow, I'm kind of jumping in at a great time. And the reason I say all this is, if you're listening to this and you haven't watched the Clone Wars, it's worth watching just these last 4 episodes. And that's kind of my like top level spoiler free thing. They do such a good job of treating it kind of like, it's obvious I'm missing out on a ton of stuff, but they introduce the characters and the dynamics and the storylines of what's going on so well that it kind of feels like a really good jumping on point.
They designed this story, I think, definitely on purpose for people to jump in who haven't watched the series at all before. Unlike, like, I wouldn't recommend these just be the first 4 episodes, but I'm also very biased towards the Clone Wars series as a whole. And the characters that they build up throughout the entire season and the relationships. But yeah, they're like the funny takeaway that I've had going along with the homie Ben Bellevue while we were watching the entire season is that it felt like Dave Filoni wanted to just do another Clone Wars movie with these last 4 episodes ended up being. And he went to Disney about it, and they're like, oh, well, the last time we did a Clone Wars movie, it didn't work out. So we're only like, you can tell that story, but you need to do it in a full Clone Wars season. And that's why we got the first 8 episodes as well. That's just what it felt like, where it's like, all right, well, if we need to do at least 12 episodes, let's tack on these first 8 episodes, and then let's get to the really dope stuff in the last 4. And even like the frustrating thing, just really quick for the season 7 as a whole, is that the first 2 arcs just don't pay off or connect in any sort of way that's worthwhile to the last arc. And that's the frustrating thing. It's like, yes, the last arc can be watched on its own, but I don't feel like that should be the case. It was frustrating watching it week to week and seeing finally seeing the Bad Batch arc, which was one of the kind of like lost arcs from when the series originally got canceled. So it was cool to see them like finally animate it, finally see it totally beautiful in 2020. But then to see that and then never see it come back or pay off, and then to get this Trace arc in the middle that the most we get out of the final arc is like, oh, what were you doing on that planet? It's a long story. Cool. Glad that's what those 4 episodes led to.
So many layers.
Yeah, so many God damn it.
Yeah, I felt the same. I'd seen you tweet that, and it kind of put in clarity this final season. As someone who's just been marathoning the show for the last few months, like, I do think that Bad Batch arc on its own is really fun. Like, as someone who didn't even know it was these lost episodes until like a week ago, it's a really fun arc. And we somehow both tweeted the exact same tweet of they should make a video game of the Bad Batch immediately because it's so perfect for it.
Just do Republic Commando, but just just paint on the Bad Batch over them.
It would be perfect. Yeah, just make the remaster of Bad Batch skin. It would work perfectly. But
exactly.
Yeah, I like that arc itself was a very fun arc, but when it's a third of this season and not 4 episodes in, say, like a 23 or 25 episode season, especially knowing that this was built as the final season, this is what fans have waited so long for, it did feel oddly disjointed as a like season of television, and I don't think quite capitalized on the anticipation for all of this that it could have had it been a little bit more all focused together instead of these 3 arcs.
The one kind of saving grace, and just to wrap up, like my kind of general thoughts on the season 7 as a whole is like I kind of look at it as like a season 6 part 2. Because season 6, which dropped on Netflix originally, it was like the kind of last episodes that they were able to get done before they got canceled. And so that was like originally, like I think the Bad Batch arc was supposed to be in season 6. I've never heard about the Trace arc before. So I don't know if that's something they decided to add to like explain what Ahsoka was doing on said planets with the Pikes and whatnot. But and it does kind of suck. Like in retrospect, I was actually just watching a video the other day of after the series got canceled, they still had these arcs that like weren't animated whatsoever. Like they had some like kind of rough ideas for them, but because they couldn't go anywhere with the Clone Wars series anymore at the time, this was back in 2014, they gave the kind of story arcs that they had planned for season 6 and whatever season 7 was supposed maybe originally going to be, they gave it to other kind of storytellers. Like I think there's a book about I think Dooku at one point. There's a comic series that was originally supposed to be a Clone Wars arc about Darth Maul escaping imprisonment from the Emperor or the Chancellor, because the last time we saw Darth Maul, I think in the show, he had gotten captured by the Chancellor. So it is kind of weird to see him with not being in the show, not being captured by Palpatine anymore. And so it's just very interesting. So that's in a comic series now. There's like a Dooku book, I think, that they wanted to tell in the show.
Book right behind me. Actually.
Oh, there it is.
There you go.
That I lost. Yeah.
And then there was like an arc they also wanted to do with Anakin and Obi-Wan on Utapau, which would have dealt with kind of the aftermath of Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order. So it kind of like knowing those and like in retrospect, I wonder if they're like, fuck, we should have kept these kind of stories to our own and not given them to like comic book writers and book writers and stuff. So we could have like made it for season 7. So I would love, honestly, now that we have a Mandalorian documentary series, I would have loved like a Clone Wars final season documentary series to see like what the kind of mindset was going into this final season and like what they wanted to do versus what they could actually do. Just a lot of interesting questions I have throughout the weeks of going through every new episode and being like, all right, cool. Like the trailer that dropped before season 7 started made it seem like the entire season was going to be all like, all right, we're catching up and we're going to redo a lot of episode 3. Let's go. And then it was like, all right, well, instead the first 8 episodes going to be about the Bad Batch, which is cool. And then it's going to be about Ahsoka and these 2 sisters, wherever the fuck they do. But they don't matter. I was very frustrated by this final season, but it did pay off in the last 4 episodes.
Without getting into spoilers at all, do you think that they could have dragged that episode 3 stuff out over an entire season? Like, would you have preferred that, or do you kind of think that they did it perfectly with the couple of that stuff was featured in?
I think
there could have been another arc.
I think there could have been another arc that we had gotten at least maybe like right before the event. Like we got a couple episodes right before episode 3, right? Like again, not spoiling too much, but there's a moment where you realize like, oh, Anakin and Obi-Wan are about to go on this mission, which is the start of episode 3. So I think there could have been a little more time, maybe not just with Ahsoka, because the last 4 episodes are mainly Ahsoka focused. But I think it would have been cool to see some scenes reimagined in Clone Wars. Shout out to Chloe, who is very, very, very upset that all we got out of General Grievous in the entire series was one frame. I felt so bad for her.
It was weird,
and it just like it felt like there was more that they wanted to do and play around with episode 3, because I'm of the mindset that like episode 3 is such a cool idea and a cool story that just like was not implemented well in the movie. So I think it would have been cool to see some scenes reimagined, like more scenes reimagined, because there are a couple of moments that we get. I think they could have spent a little more time with it, especially because it's weird. Because like in my interpretation of episode 3, just like I feel like it takes place over the course of like a little longer, because at the beginning of episode 3, that's when Anakin is told that Padme is pregnant, and by the end of episode 3 she's like about to have kids, but at the beginning of the movie she's not like super pregnant. And so it's just like, how long does episode like over the course of episode 3, like how long is that? And so it's like weird.
Force babies, man.
Yeah, I guess
True.
whatever.
Less than 9 months, dude. It's the whole thing.
Confusing and dumb.
I do want to move into the spoilers.
Yeah.
I feel like we're kind of like mixing and matching with the spoilers. So I want to make the clear distinction. So final spoiler free words. How do you guys recommend people consume this show at this point?
If you're willing to do the whole show, watch the chronological version. If you want the excerpts that are the best hits, Barrett's recommendation list that he tweeted out, that he first sent to me, but then tweeted out. I'm sure we can.
Yeah, I tweet that out a bunch because people ask me all the time, like, "Oh, what's the watch order?" I made that originally for Dorno.
Yeah, that list is very good. Like I've gone back to it after watching everything, and it does really, I think, hit a lot of the like key stuff that you would need to know without having to deal with all the filler. But I do think it's a thing that you shouldn't just jump into these last 4 episodes if you're willing to put in a little more time.
But if you're not, it's worth
Then
it. I think that at the very least, Star Wars fans should do that. It's so worth it, and I do think that it makes the prequels better. Which is awesome. Like anything that can do that, I think is good.
We watched Revenge of the Sith 2 nights ago in part of our rewatch because we realized we were lined up, and it is so funny as I legitimately don't think I've seen that movie since it was out in theaters, so it's been a very long time for me. And watching so many things happen in that movie now with the context that Clone Wars adds, like there's still some terrible stuff in that movie, don't get me wrong, but there are like lines and moments that probably in 2005 or whenever that was, or 6, would feel so random and out of place, but now have this incredible rich lore and backstory to them that are really cool. Like there's still bad decisions back then, but now there's a really cool and interesting backstory to so much of that stuff.
All right, guys, we are now moving in.
Really quick. Last thing I want to say
to the spoiler zone. Barrett has one last thing to say.
One last thing, and I actually wanted to try to say this at the top of the show, but this like I cannot recommend this enough. I tweeted out about this already, but seriously, if you got into Clone Wars because of the hype of the last season and you fell in love with the main characters that the Clone Wars introduced, watch Star Wars Rebels. If you really liked Jedi Fallen Order and the idea of Vader's Inquisitors, watch Star Wars Rebels. If you really like The Mandalorian and like want to learn more of the history of the Darksaber, watch Star Wars Rebels. Fucking watch that show. No, like, and someone was asking me earlier of like, oh, what episodes do I skip? And it's like, no. And that's why Star Wars Rebels is my favorite, like, Star Wars story, is that like there is nothing to skip. Some arcs might seem trivial at time. Bless you, Tim. There might be some arcs that seem trivial, but it's all character building to get to the really cool stuff. Seriously, watch that show. It is fucking amazing.
Fantastic. It's so funny there, Barrett. So funny. I was about to cut you off to get into the ad because I knew you were going to swear. I knew you were going to end with a swear.
You can't control me, Tim. I'm wild.
You're the wild boy, Barrett Courtney. That's what they call you.
You can't cage me.
Cannot cage you. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Hims. You know, a common issue that men face but don't always want to talk about. You can think long and hard about it. See what I did there? 40% of men by age 40 struggle from not being able to get and maintain an erection. When guys turn to weird solutions to do nothing, instead, they can turn to medicine and science. Expensive pills and injections where no man wants an injection. That is no good. You can check out Hims and you can discover the tiny pill worthy of a big celebration. Forhims.com is a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, sexual wellness for men. We've been talking about it for years. Andy and Nick have both been using it for their hair. They love those gummies. They love this stuff, man. They swear by it. It's well-known generic equivalents to brand name prescriptions to help you combat ED and hair loss. These are prescription solutions backed by science and made more affordable. You can stop worrying about multiple in-office doctor visits. You don't need any of that. Those are embarrassing. Those are awkward. Those are weird sometimes. All you got to do is answer some questions about your medical history and chat with the doctor for a confidential review. If approved by the doctor, products are shipped directly to your door. It's great stuff. You can try Hims today by starting off with a free online visit. Go to forhims.com/KFMS. That's FORHIMS.com/KFMS. Forhims.com/KFMS. Prescription products Prescription products are subject to doctor approval and require an online consultation with a physician who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. You can see the website for full details and safety information. This could cost hundreds if you went in person to the doctor's office or pharmacy. Remember, that's forhims.com/KFMS. And then next up, MeUndies, baby. Summertime dreaming. There are days when visions of sunshine and surf dance through our heads, probably now more than ever, as we collectively mold into our couches. But we got to keep the dream alive. MeUndies is committed to the cause by keeping you in a constant stream of uninterrupted, dream-inducing undie comfort. I love MeUndies copy. Every single time it's an adventure. You never quite know where you're going to go, but you always know you're going to end up being real soft. I'm MeUndies out right now, as I often am, wearing the undies, wearing the lounge pants, wearing the socks, wearing the shirt. I am covered in the softest micro modal fabric. You know what I'm talking about, Barret?
Yeah.
Thank you, Barret. Thank you. MeUndies are made from micromodal and irresistibly soft, sustainable fabric that encases your nether regions in a cloud of comfort. It's magically made from trees. Another reason to give them a hug. MeUndies are offered in ranges of size from extra small to 4XL. MeUndies has a great offer for you guys. Any first-time purchasers, you get 15% off and free shipping. You got to give this super softness a try. To get your 15% off your first order, free shipping, 100% satisfaction guarantee, go to MeUndies.com/morning. That's MeUndies.com/morning. Check it out. Go get soft. All right, guys. Now it's time to move to the spoiler zone. While I was doing those ad reads, the copy in front of me kept for some reason disappearing, like behind the Discord thing. So that's why I kept stumbling where I was just like, where was I? What word am I reading right now? So I apologize for that. But here we go, guys. Star Wars, Clone Wars, spoiler mode. Barret, take it away.
I mean, where do we start, man? I don't even. God. I'm trying to just think about where the first episode of the final arc started. The beginning sets up so well of, again, like what you were saying earlier, Tim, of like you can really just jump into this final arc and not watching the series as a whole and understand the relationships that they've been building in the show and stuff, like seeing how like cocky Anakin was at the very beginning, but having this plan of taking down all these droids is just so cool, and showing the kind of the rapport that him and Obi-Wan have, that leads into the scene of Anakin seeing Ahsoka for the first time in a while, and just that moment hurt so much. Like I retweeted a tweet earlier that was like, thank you to the Clone Wars for giving us what is probably the best brother-sister relationship in a Star Wars story at all.
Didn't even kiss though.
Yeah, I mean, not all the brothers and sisters need to kiss in the Star Wars, Tim. It's fucking weird. But I totally lost my
Sorry about that.
I can
distract
jump in.
Yeah.
As someone who has been watching this all over the last few months, I think what the show as a whole, like as it went through its seasons and really kind of figured out what its perspective was, is really, really well encapsulated in this arc. And the two big things for me that stand out are Ahsoka, her growth and her evolution as a Jedi, as a person, as a citizen, as she says a couple moments in these episodes, and her relationship with Anakin and the rest of the Jedi Council, as well as showing the clones for much more than they were,
Totally.
especially when we first saw them. Like, you get that so much throughout this show, and some of my favorite arcs are the clone-focused arcs. But I think what's so great about this arc in particular is putting Ahsoka in that moment when all of the clones turn on her, and having to see that moment through the eyes of someone that we have seen and grown and care about so much over 7 seasons of a show. That immediate betrayal and then what unfolds after that, and how there are some complexities to that moment, I think is just so beautifully done in this arc, and so it lovingly crafted, and really rings true to what this show as a whole has been trying to push since its first season.
It hurts so much, the line, and this is in episode 3, where her and Rex are talking to each other and kind of like discussing like their entire lives have been centered around this war, and knowing in just moments they're about to see the end of it, and just saying like, you guys, you have been great troopers for the Republic, and you've been a great friend to me. And just knowing, you're like, oh no, this is that we're about to see the ultimate top 10 anime betrayal with the clones and the Jedi. And it's one of those interesting, and the thing that got me in that moment, right, where we get the build up, like Darth Maul's captured, and I love that, like Darth Maul, like I love throughout the kind of entire series that Maul knew like kind of part of the plan of Sidious trying to take over, making his empire, but still like not having all of the pieces. Like, he
It
knew
was really
Anakin.
cool, man.
Yeah,
like that seeing him kind of like piece it together and seeing him be just such a I mean, first off, seeing Maul back and like hit with an actual character, it's like that's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
But having him like the way that he was talking, and like it was a cool thing of him presenting all this information as if he knew it all,
Mhm.
but like and kind of owning the evilness of it, like kind of being like, I'm in control of this. But it was also clear that he didn't actually know key parts of the plan. So
Yep.
then when it all started coming together, you saw it click in his head, and like
Yeah.
to me that was super rad and very well shown, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's believable. And like for the way that Ahsoka and Darth Maul are acting like throughout the 4 episodes I watched, it always felt believable. It never
Mhm.
felt like a weird jump that in logic that I feel like, especially in
Yeah.
the prequels, there was a lot of decisions made where I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Whereas with this, I'm like, this does make sense.
Well, and
Mhm.
it plays so well into what, and this is one of my favorite things about the show as a whole, has done with Maul, because it really does show him in the earlier seasons when he's first introduced as this broken individual. Like, he has been shattered and gone
Yep.
into isolation, and he is just driven crazy by all of that, by his desire for revenge and by the betrayals that he's felt. And as they layer that on through all these seasons, you see him even here where he's much more in control, and he is much more of a like leader figure and more wily and cunning. He still is dealing with that, like that fractured brain that he has. Like, he is still broken in so many ways, and the way that they're able to convey that with just small moments is so great.
Shout out really quick to the cameo of Vision from Ultron's character at one point, where Maul is talking to the leaders of the Syndicate. I swear that like the 3 people that he's talking to, the one on the far right is Vision from
Really?
It
yeah.
is. We
Yeah.
looked
that's
it up.
awesome.
We looked
Oh,
up the
yeah.
image. My girlfriend Meredith pointed it out. It's basically the exact pose he has in a shot from the movie. Like, they
Okay.
That's
perfectly.
awesome.
Yeah, it is absolutely 100% meant to be him in that moment.
And it's one of those cool things where it's like, I have my own frustrations of how and why Maul was included in Solo, but it's cool that they still connected it, and they're explaining of like, yes, Maul eventually does become the leader of this like crime syndicate, and these are like the kind of little moments we're getting of that, and seeing his like shitty leadership where like the Mandalorian, like a part of the Mandalorians were originally a part of that kind of syndicate, but then he just at the end, like near the end of that battle, he's like, all right, we'll die honorably. I'm getting out of here. I'm gonna go on my ship. So yeah, quick shout out to Vision from Ultron. But to go back really quick to the moment of Order 66, building up to it, and we get like actually the actual audio from episode 3 of Anakin, Mace Windu, and Palpatine all like kind of in this weird scene of Anakin having to decide between the two. We get that.
Sorry, I was just going to
Go
say,
ahead.
having rewatched that movie 2 nights ago, as important, that is arguably one of the most important scenes in the prequel trilogy. Also, easily one of the worst scenes in the prequel trilogy for me.
That's what I was saying about logic just not making sense. Like,
Yeah.
how did Palpatine get all disfigured? That's how? Really? Okay. Stupid.
Well,
Did you guys see the clip though of somebody like took the clip from Revenge of the Sith and the final fight, or not final fight, but the fight in the third episode of this arc, and they line up perfectly. Where
that's awesome.
like you hear Sidious's scream like when the fight first starts, and when their fight starts is when Maul and Ahsoka start fighting, and when the glass breaks in both places.
Shit.
It's like 2 minutes and 16 seconds. It's on Twitter somewhere, but it's like it lines up perfectly where every single beat is happening at the same time. So
that's really cool.
That extended Ahsoka Maul fight is just hands down one of the coolest fights.
And that was like the scene where it was like I knew the season was already so beautiful and beautifully animated and stuff, especially with the Bad Batch arc where we got some really amazing one-shot action sequences with the Bad Batch, but like this their fight against each other was one of those things where it's like, holy, this is almost movie level animation quality here that's being presented, and it was just the coolest thing. But really quick, trying to go back to this this one moment where we're building up to the Order 66 moment, and Ahsoka goes back to talk to Rex because she felt something is wrong through the Force, and Rex like turns around, he's like, "No, I'll do it," and he starts screaming, "Find him, Fives." Find him, Fives. And that was like one of the like that's when I broke, because and it blows my mind because Disney Plus has like they're like, hey, if you want to like do a quick like rewatch of Clone Wars leading up to season 7, here are our suggested arcs, and the Fives arc is not on that suggested watch order, which blows my fucking mind. Tim, if you don't know, and you probably don't, in season 6 the first arc is Fives was a clone trooper who was like this close to uncovering the plot of Order 66 and these inhibitor chips and all of this stuff. And so that moment of like calling back to Fives and everything that he went through, where like they like Palpatine and the cloners covered everything up just to see like that payoff for what Fives went through and discovered helped out Rex and Ahsoka, and that was the moment I broke. And then seeing Ahsoka realize what was going on as well was just like absolutely heartbreaking. And it's so cool at the end of that episode too, where like the machine can't find the inhibitor chip, and she goes up and she's trying to like. This was a moment like I was like, I feel like we might be reaching a little bit here, but where she's like trying to sense it through the Force and like saying like I'm one with the Force is with me, which is
I got chills.
Yeah,
it was a really cool moment.
Would this be the earliest canonical point someone has said that?
I think I don't know like the nitty gritty, so I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's something like a phrase that the Jedi like knows or stuff like that. But I think this is the earliest that we hear it, so that might pave some cool things for maybe Ahsoka runs into some people we know from Rogue One. And so that was a great moment, and just seeing like in the final episode really. The heartbreak that Ahsoka and Rex have to go through of realizing that essentially like Rex's brothers are like all like there's no way they're gonna stop this, right? Like it was a miracle that Rex got out of it, and so him kind of having to come to this realization of like they are not gonna stop. They will go down with the ship to make sure that we die as well, and like that kind of realization of like what the clones are willing to do with Rex and Ahsoka was just so heartbreaking, especially if like Jesse wasn't I wouldn't say like a main clone throughout the series, but he had a few arcs, and some of the best, like he was involved in some of the best arcs I would say in Clone Wars. So it's like heartbreaking of seeing like Jesse kind of being since Rex's they realized that Rex isn't on their side, like Jesse kind of taking lead and being like, no, like you are now an enemy of the Republic, we have to execute you and stuff. It was just, it hurt so goddamn much. And the one thing before if you guys want to jump in, the one thing I saw a couple people saying was like, it feels like the last like kind of arc feels weakened because of from people who have watched Star Wars Rebels, because we know what happens to some of these characters already. And for me, like I have to hard disagree. Like, yeah, we know like what characters would survive, who would move on and stuff, but it didn't make seeing it any easier of like what they had to go through. Like it's some of it is teased in later stuff, but like to actually see the moment-to-moment heartbreak that they have to go through was just not easy whatsoever.
Yeah, someone who hasn't watched Rebels but knows that, certain characters have made it onto that and are even in talks for other things, and Darth Maul and Solo and everything. Especially that last episode, like I knew Ahsoka would survive, but how she would get out of all of that was so tense and so like nail-bitingly crazy to go through, especially as the ship starts to go down. You're like, okay, the ship is going down. They don't have any way off this. How do they get out of this? And it's so well executed, and it's such like on its own as like an arc and as a completion to the series. It is really dramatically satisfying and really, really enthralling to watch. And it doesn't help that it doesn't hurt that the animation is just so beautiful by this point.
It's
like
so good.
The scene of the ship falling to the moon, and they're like they're dropped down that one. It reminded me of several Fast and Furious moments, but two, it was just it was. I had to, but it was so beautiful and so like. There were moments where I'm like, that's a real sky. They like rotoscoped into that, right? Because this is just like the way they designed it was just so gorgeous.
Man. And on top of that, the animation and just kind of like just the choreography of a lot of the scenes, like the Siege of Mandalore in the beginning when they jump out of the ship, they're kind of like she just jumps out and it's just fucking blading everyone. I was like, this looks so sick. Then all the Mandalorians with the jetpacks flying in, I'm like. There's a sense of scale that like they really nailed. It's like it does feel like a final set piece in a movie, but like it was consistent throughout just the 4 episodes I watched. I would say there was like 6 epic fights. Like that's pretty impressive. But at the end of the day, it's about the characters, and I think that even knowing as little as I do about these characters, and I also know that they live. I also know like what happens going on in Rebels and all that stuff. Just like spoilers, like top level. None of that shit matters because we're seeing the moments and they're delivering the moments so well that I'm like, cool. That's what Clone Wars is about. It's not about like who lives and who dies. It's about the, relationships between these different characters. And these episodes portrayed that so well. The opening of this arc was Anakin standing against all the enemies and
with flying clone troopers. I just want to say.
And all of them hiding underneath the dudes hiding underneath the bridge with R2.
So
that
good.
was fucking rad,
wonderful.
Right?
Yeah.
But I love how they presented this as such a like shadow of the Last Jedi scene of Luke like walking towards all the AT-ATs. I'm like, man, like this is so cinematic, and like they nailed any type of dialogue between the characters in that scene. I was like, this is really fucking good.
Yeah.
I feel like the one thing that I didn't love about watching them is it feels so tied to the movies, and in good ways and bad ways. It's exciting when we see things and it's like, oh my god, I know what's happening here.
Yeah, and like the way they recreate like
happening.
Yeah, we're like we get the recreation of Mace Windu saying like I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi and stuff like that. Like little moments like that are cool.
They're so cool because they're better here. And I think that's the biggest problem. And it's like this sucks that this is a complaint because there's no fixing this. But it's like, God, can you imagine how good this could have been if it didn't have to follow the plans of everything exactly? Like this feels like it's like really good working around the issues, because even there, it's looking at it, it feels like every 5 minutes someone has to go run off to do the thing that we know they do. And it's just like, I would have much rather been able to stay with Anakin and Obi-Wan for a bit, but they kept having to go away. So to the point that like when Anakin comes back as Vader at the end, it's like hype as fuck, but also it's like, it feels so disjointed just watching this.
And it's interesting like that you make it like the last time that Ahsoka and Anakin see each other actually wasn't very like set by the movie. I would say that's actually more set by a very specific line in Star Wars Rebels. Like there's a certain line where it's like the last time we know, the last time that Ahsoka and Anakin see each other is when Anakin goes off to save the Chancellor. And so, and it is one of those things where I totally get those frustrations, but it's also like that moment being a fan and realizing like, oh my God, this is the moment. This is the last time they see each other as these people. And that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking that they don't know that they're not going to see each other before Order 66. So I understand that, like the frustration of how it had to fit around everything else. But I
it
also
almost makes
just accept it.
It makes you wish Filoni could just kind of do his own retconned Revenge of the Sith
Absolutely.
and just make a really cool animated version of it. But I do think like even though they had a lot of that framework that they had to work within, some of the best moments are the original stuff and are the things that really ring true to Ahsoka and the clones. Like for me, the two most heartbreaking moments, the Fives moment was huge for me. The one in I think it's the first episode, maybe the second, but the moment when Ahsoka comes back to the clones and they all have their masks painted.
The first episode
is such a beautiful character-driven moment that is so specific there. And then alternatively, the flip side of that moment at the end, after the whole battle has ended, and the implication of Ahsoka being there and working through to make sure she can honor each of them, even though they turned on her. Like she always believed they are.
She didn't,
and I'm getting chills thinking about that shot right now. But it's just like they are people to her. They matter. And that being what the show is about is so great.
And it was so sad because like that realization of like that shot and like the kind of like mass memorial grave, whatever you want to call it, with their individual helmets being kind of posted up. And it's like that realization of just like, fuck, she didn't even want to kill any of them. Like she didn't want any of them to die, even though they were turned on her, because she understood that this wasn't something they were doing of their own volition. They were being forced to do this. And it was just like one of those sad moments of like letting go of this family that like she was a part of again, like she had ripped off the Band-Aid when she left the Jedi Order and then put it back on when she like helped with the Siege of Mandalore and like was kind of maybe questioning of coming back to the Jedi, especially like when Yoda asked like as a Jedi, and she's like, as a civilian, like I'm not too sure what I want to do from here. And then seeing her forced into that decision of like, no, there is no going back to the Jedi. There is no going back to the Republic. All of it's gone. And then just the fucking final scene, which I was not expecting whatsoever, but it's so good. And it really brings it again together of just like selling how great this relationship was between Anakin and Ahsoka, and they're like brother sister relationship, because this is after all this shit's gone down. He has discovered this mass grave. Who knows why the hell they're on this moon, whatever, who knows, but he discovers Ahsoka's lightsaber, and it's that he has like this moment, and it's so sad because Vader is like, you love to hate him, but you also love to sympathize with him, and just like how shitty of a life he has, where he has this realization of like, yeah, Ahsoka didn't make it. To him at least, it seems like Ahsoka didn't make it out, which is just so heartbreaking, especially knowing all of the other shit that he had to go through. It's just so good. And then also someone else pointed out on Twitter that the clones that are with him, who are Vader's fists, or the troopers that are with him are Vader's fists, and they're the few clones that didn't get decommissioned during the Empire. So they are clones from the 501st. So they're clones who are kind of visiting their brother's like mass grave and all this stuff, which is just so fucking sad. I can't believe they did it and made it fucking stick the landing. It's so good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, man. And I want to give a shout out to the badass motherfucker that is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I love him so much, man.
And even in this, he was great. I love like the dialogue he has with Ahsoka, and like that moment where he's just like, look, I'm asking you to do this. It's like, this is fucking tight, man. That's my boy, Obi.
I'll give you another fucking, because I don't know if you'll ever go back and watch it. And we're in spoiler territory, so we're safe. But in the first arc with the Bad Batch, Tim, there's a scene where Anakin is having a private like kind of conversation with Padme over like hologram and shit. And I think it's Rex who's like trying to distract Obi-Wan to make sure Obi-Wan doesn't walk in on Anakin. And Anakin walks out after the meeting, and not even going in the room, Obi-Wan's like, I hope you told Padme I said hi. And it's just like one of those things, like fucking Obi-Wan knew, man. He knew.
That's great,
so
dude.
Yeah, one of the
Obi-Wan's
weirdest things about having watched this whole show in these past few months is that realization of like, oh, the most characterization I've gotten of Obi-Wan and Anakin and their relationship is through this show. Like I have grown to love those characters and appreciate them and question them in different and new ways because of how much we just get to see them being in the show. And it's such a great aspect of what Clone Wars was able to pull off.
We asked you to write into patreon.com/kindoffunny to leave your thoughts on Star Wars, the Clone Wars. Let's see where we go. Jason Hales here says, I love the Clone Wars. There's some ups and downs in this series, but overall, I loved it. Enjoyed how we got more of Anakin and Obi's story. It adds more to their story and connection to improve the prequels. Adding Ahsoka was amazing. She was an amazing character we kind of got to see grow up in all this. So in season 7, those last 4 episodes were perfection. Some say the parts with their sisters were not great. I feel those were good parts to see what happens when she leaves the Jedi in season 6, how others see the Jedi. And so it helps build on who she is before going off to face Maul. If you didn't have this part, I would have been confused why she just went right after Maul. It was good character building of her facing who she is. I enjoy what they did to the clones, building some great characters, and you really cared about them. At the end with Rex crying, you feel that so much. What a great time with the Clone Wars. I wish we had season 7 done before Rebels. It would have made it more impactful to not know what happens to Ahsoka and Rex. So it kind of ruined it to know they're okay in Rebels. Still amazing, and would for sure recommend watching them, and then for sure go on to Rebels. And then Sam Mosher says, my Clone Wars season 7 review. Like the show as a whole, season 7 is good at points, like with the first arc, mediocre at others, like the middle arc, and sometimes the best Star Wars has to offer, Ahsoka's final arc. Seeing the end of Ahsoka, Rex, and Maul's Clone Wars story made the whole season totally worth it, and that final Vader scene gave me chills. I think it's time for me to finally watch Rebels.
Yes, do it. Watch Rebels. Just do it.
And then a couple other ones here. We got Johnny Naylor saying it was perfect. Ahsoka versus Maul will forever be my favorite lightsaber duel. And David Onfield saying, underwhelming, but overall well-executed final season. The series finale would have been so much more impactful if we didn't know Ahsoka, Rex, and Maul would survive because of Rebels. So there you go, guys. There you go. For next week, please write in just your recommendations of what you've been watching during the quarantine times, and we'll go through all of that. But yeah, before we end the show, like what? So we know Rosario Dawson is heavily rumored, reported even to be cast in Mandalorian season 2. Where does that like leave you, Barrett, specifically, having seen Rebels and knowing where she ends up? Like, are you stoked about that?
No, because honestly, I want a sequel series to Rebels specifically, like an animated series that's a sequel to Rebels. And like, I feel like because they're including her in Mandalorian, we're not going to get that. And like, I doubt she's going to be I think she'll definitely have like moments and stuff, but I doubt she's going to be like a series regular or anything. Right. And so like, it's cool because obviously the dark saber, again, watched Rebels to learn more about the history of the dark saber before it popped up in Mandalorian. It makes sense of like why she's going to show up, why maybe some other characters from Rebels will show up. My hope is, and this is probably not what's going to happen, is that they do an episode with Ahsoka and maybe another character from Star Wars Rebels, and then that like kind of reminds people of like, oh, those two people are still have an adventure to go on. I wonder if they'll expand on that anymore, and then we'll finally get a Star Wars Rebels sequel series. That's my hope.
If you got a Star Wars Rebels sequel, where would you want that set timeline wise?
Without spoiling too much from Star Wars Rebels, it would I would want it to be after episode 6.
But before Mandalorian?
How is Mandalorian 5 years after?
I think it was 7.
Yeah, 7 sounds right.
Okay. Yeah, maybe before Mandalorian, I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. You're about to say something, Dornbush?
I was just going to say, I think the original Variety report, and obviously that stuff was unofficial, but their sources are pretty good. I think they had talked about how Ahsoka's appearance would be a possible like backdoor pilot situation where they would gauge how people responded to live action and then maybe spin off from there. But like as of right now, we don't know any animated Star Wars series in the works, correct? Like we know of 4 different live action series at this point, but there's no animated stuff on the horizon.
There was a rumor that was spreading around a few months ago about an animated series, but yeah, because like they're winding down on Resistance, I think.
Yeah.
And isn't there something else too? I don't know.
They do like shorts. I know they've been doing like a series of shorts. But,
yeah, but they're winding down on Resistance, so you got to imagine that they're looking at some sort of possibility of an animation series. Like I don't know how I would feel about a live action Ahsoka series, just because like the voice I forget her name because if
Ashley
you know me,
Eckstein.
the voice of Ahsoka is like so important, I would say, and like just I'm interested to see how Rosario Dawson pulls off a live action interpretation of Ahsoka. So yeah, I'm still questioning if I would want like a full on Ahsoka live action series, or if I just want, let's go back to the classic. Let's get the original voice actress. Let's continue on the story that was left off in Star Wars Rebels.
We'll see.
Yep.
Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us. Barret, thank you for joining us for a rare Screencast appearance. I love it. We will be back next week with another episode of Screencast. Until then, love you guys.